They were millionaire twins. But they wouldn't eat until their new black nanny did something no one expected. The twins hadn't touched a single meal in 3 days. Not a spoonful, not a crumb. And now, they were wasting away inside a $3 million mansion where grief had moved in and love had moved out. That person will not touch my grandchildren's food. Vivian Blackwood's shrill voice echoed off the vaulted ceilings like a siren of authority and entitlement. Standing stiff and furious, she pointed a flawlessly manicured finger toward Camilla, the young black woman quietly standing at the entrance of the Italian marble kitchen. Just look at her, Thomas. Do you really think someone like that knows how to take care of children of our lineage? Camilla said nothing at first. She simply clutched her purse with steady hands and a calm dignity that was quickly becoming her armor. She had seen prejudice before. Plenty of it, in hospitals and in homes, but never quite like this. Never so raw. At 28, Camilla was a pediatric nurse with honors from Atlanta University, specializing in childhood trauma. She had dealt with grieving children, but nothing could quite prepare her for the venomous glare of a mother-in-law who had no intention of seeing her humanity. Thomas Blackwood shifted uncomfortably between the two women, a widower for just 8 months. He looked haunted by fatigue, desperation, and the quiet agony of watching his 5-year-old twins, Lily and James, spiral into emotional and physical withdrawal. Since Isabella's death, the children had stopped eating, sleeping, laughing. 3 nannies had come and gone, white, polished, and perfectly acceptable by Vivian standards. And yet, they had all failed miserably. "Mother, please," Thomas tried, his voice tentative. "Don't give me that, Thomas," Vivian snapped. "You hired this woman without even consulting me. These people have strange methods, exotic foods that could harm the children. What if she brings diseases? What if I can really help your grandchildren?" Camilla interrupted gently, her voice calm but assertive. The room fell still. "Because so far, from what I can see, they're wasting away under the proper care you value so much." The silence that followed was glacial. Vivian blinked at the boldness, clearly scandalized. Thomas, on the other hand, raised an eyebrow, caught off guard by the woman's quiet strength. From upstairs, the soft, pitiful sound of crying drifted down like smoke. It was a sound that filled the house ever since Isabella's funeral. Camilla stood tall. She knew what she was walking into. Raised by a single mother in the outskirts of Atlanta, she had worked since the age of 14 to support herself through college. After losing her father at 6, she had dedicated her life to understanding childhood grief. She could see the signs: Lily's refusal to eat, James's destruction of his own toys. These weren't behavioral issues. They were trauma responses, and she had a plan. "Can I at least try?" she asked Thomas directly, ignoring Vivian entirely. 3 days. If I can't get them to eat a full meal in 3 days, I'll leave without a word. Vivian scoffed, her pearls rattling on her collarbone. "Thomas, you can't seriously be considering." 3 days, he said quietly, then extended his hand to Camilla. "But only on one condition. My mother-in-law supervises everything." Camilla grasped his hand. His skin was rough, bitten nails, calloused fingers, the signature of a man unraveling under pressure. She smiled softly. Perfect. She might even learn a thing or two. Vivian choked on her indignation. Thomas watched, torn between hope and guilt, as Camilla maintained a serene, unfazed expression. What neither of them realized was that Camilla had already researched this family. Every therapist note, every behavioral report, every article ever written about the Blackwoods. She knew their history, and she had come not just to feed the children, but to uncover what was eating this family alive. If you're moved by stories of courage, healing, and breaking barriers, stay with us, because what happened over the next 72 hours would expose deep, uncomfortable truths that the Blackwood family had spent generations burying. Camilla had only been in the house for 15 minutes when she began cataloging what the others had missed. Emotional neglect radiated from every corner. Lily was curled beneath the stairs, hugging a grimy blanket that hadn't seen a wash in weeks. James was in his room, building block towers only to destroy them violently, a textbook sign of unresolved trauma. Look, Vivian shrieked dramatically, pointing down at the Persian rug. She's kneeling on my $15,000 carpet. Thomas, do you see this? Thomas didn't respond. His eyes were fixed on Lily. For the first time in months, the little girl wasn't crying. She was listening. She was focused on Camila. She's connecting with them, Thomas murmured, as if afraid to believe it. Connecting? Vivian snorted. These people have always been good for kitchens, laundry rooms, and gardens, not for raising children of our social class. Lily and James need refinement, Thomas, not rainbow politics and coddling. Camila didn't flinch. She stayed close to Lily, speaking softly. The girl whispered something into her ear. Grandma doesn't like you, she said quietly. She didn't like the last nanny either. She was too young. The one before that was too short. And now she doesn't like you because I'm black, Camila finished for her, calm and unashamed. Lily blinked up at her, thoughtful. But Mommy used to say people of different colors make the world more beautiful, like a rainbow. The word sliced straight through Thomas's chest. Isabella used to say that. He had forgotten, lost it somewhere in the fog of grief and resignation. Now it came back, clear and warm, like sunlight through stained glass. Vivian paled. Thomas, you can't let her fill their heads with this nonsense. They'll grow up thinking that. Thinking what exactly? Thomas turned sharply, facing his mother-in-law for the first time in months with a spine made of steel. That all people deserve dignity? That grief doesn't care about skin color? That love can come from anywhere. Vivian froze, and Camila, still kneeling beside a little girl who had just begun to trust again, said nothing. She didn't need to. In that moment, the mansion's silence said everything. That different people deserve respect. Camila's words hung in the air like a challenge, bold and undeniable. As the argument escalated in the opulent living room behind her, she shifted her focus, tuning out Vivian's rising hysteria and turning her full attention to James, who had timidly wandered downstairs, drawn by the shouting. His small frame looked fragile against the towering elegance of the house. He had deep circles under his eyes and a faint tremor in his hands. Physical signs Camila had seen too many times during her years at Atlanta Children's Hospital. She knelt gently in front of him. James, she asked in a whisper-soft voice, when was the last time you slept through the night? The boy blinked, surprised. No one had ever asked him that before. I don't remember, he mumbled. Sometimes I dream that Mommy's lost. And she's hungry. The boy blinked, surprised. No one had ever asked him that before. I don't remember, he mumbled. Sometimes I dream that Mommy's lost. And she's hungry. Camila nodded solemnly. Abandonment trauma. Survivor's guilt. Textbook. She had seen it countless times, especially in children who had lost a parent in sudden, tragic accidents. She leaned closer. What if I told you a secret? She whispered, her tone conspiratorial and kind. I lost my daddy when I was your age, too. And you know what I learned? James's eyes widened, searching hers. Mommies and daddies, they're never really lost, Camila said softly. Not when they're in our hearts. Something flickered in the boy's expression. Camila had seen it before. Connection. Hope. The first fragile thread of healing. Behind her, the volume of the argument between Thomas and Vivian climbed to a crescendo. She's been here less than an hour, and she's already brainwashing them. Vivian raged, her hands flailing. This is what I warned you about. Thomas. They have their own methods. Methods that don't belong in this house. Methods. Thomas repeated, incredulous. You mean talking to the children like human beings? Vivian flushed crimson. Don't give me that sarcasm. You know exactly what I mean. These people come from violent neighborhoods. They don't understand the subtleties of raising children like ours. What if she causes trouble? What if the neighbors start whispering? Camila stood then, her hands still calm, her voice cutting through the chaos like silk over steel. She walked to where Vivian was dramatically gesturing near the grand staircase. Mrs. Blackwood, she said firmly, you're right about one thing. I did grow up in a different environment than you. Vivian smirked, satisfied. Finally, some admission. I grew up in a home where my mother worked 3 jobs just to keep me in school, Camila continued evenly, where I studied pediatric nursing on an academic merit scholarship, where I learned that traumatized children don't need judgment, they need compassion, and where I also learned that the color of my skin does not and never will define my ability to care for any child. The room fell silent. Thomas looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time, not as an employee, but as someone remarkable. Vivian, on the other hand, stood frozen, her indignation burning holes in her composure. Nurse, Thomas echoed. You're a nurse? Pediatric nurse, Camila confirmed, specializing in child trauma. I spent 8 years at Atlanta Children's Hospital before moving here. Your children are exhibiting clear symptoms of reactive depression and post-traumatic stress. Nothing that can't be helped with patience, the right tools, and the right person. Vivian paled. For the last 15 minutes, she had been berating and belittling a licensed healthcare professional, someone more qualified than any suitable nanny she had previously handpicked. But you applied as a nanny, she stammered. Because, Camila replied, smiling faintly, sometimes we're put exactly where the universe needs us, and your grandchildren need much more than just a nanny. Vivian had no response. Thomas stared, his wine glass untouched, suddenly aware how deeply he had underestimated the woman now standing in his home, calm, composed, and quietly extraordinary. But they didn't know the full truth yet. Camila hadn't come to this town by accident. Her move had been deliberate, calculated. She knew more about the Blackwood family than any outsider ever should. Every venomous insult Vivian through only strengthened Camila's resolve. This wasn't just a job. It was the beginning of something far bigger, a reckoning wrapped in soft smiles and lullabies. Over the next 3 days, the impossible began to happen. For the first time in 8 months, Lily and James not only ate full meals, but asked for seconds. They laughed, played, even sang. Camila had introduced something she quietly referred to as her emotional reconnection protocol, a therapeutic approach she developed while working with orphaned children recovering from loss. Vivian watched from the living room window, her expression twisted in suspicion as Camila chased the children through the garden. It's unnatural, she muttered. She must be drugging them. No child behaves that way after what they've been through. But Thomas couldn't look away. There in the sunlight were his children, smiling, bright-eyed, alive in a way he hadn't seen in nearly a year. Camila had turned a simple lunch into a joyous ritual. Animal-shaped sandwiches, stories woven with gentle nutrition lessons, affirmations whispered between bites. The children clung to every word. Does she even have a degree from a real university? Vivian asked over dinner when Thomas praised Camila's work. Atlanta University, Mom, he replied, one of the top pediatric programs in the country, and she graduated with highest honors. Vivian scoffed. Highest honors or not, Thomas, we have to think about the future. Margaret Wellington called me yesterday asking about the new employee. The neighbors are starting to talk. That's when Camila stepped through the dining room door, tablet in hand. Mr. Blackwood, she said politely, I need to speak to you about the children's progress. It's hospital protocol to document everything. Thomas waved her over, but Vivian stood abruptly. This can wait, Thomas. We have family matters to discuss. Actually, Camila said, placing the tablet on the table, this is a family matter. Lily has gained 2.5 pounds in 3 days. James has stopped having nightmares. Both are showing measurable signs of recovery. Thomas stared at the screen, flipping through detailed charts and behavioral notes. Tangible proof of progress. Photos showed Lily smiling beside a plate of food, James drawing pictures in the sun. Every entry was time-stamped, thoroughly annotated, and deeply professional. Where did you learn a document like this? He asked, impressed. Hospital standard, Camila answered. We always document trauma cases. But there's something else I need to discuss with you. Vivian, visibly uncomfortable, sat back down. Camila's poise had become unshakable. James told me something today. She said carefully, he remembers his mother. singing a special lullaby before bed. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, but in a different version. He called it the Black Mommy song. A beat of silence. Thomas's hand trembled, and he dropped the tablet. I don't understand, he whispered. Children remember things adults often try to forget, Camilla said. James also mentioned a woman, someone who sang to them when Isabella was very sick. He called her Mommy's special friend. Just then, Camilla's phone vibrated. She looked at the screen and froze. Excuse me, she said, stepping away. I have to take this. It's important. She walked into the garden, away from the chandeliers and stairs, and answered the call with calm precision. Dr. Peterson, she said into the receiver. Yes, I have access to the medical records. No, they don't suspect anything yet. Yes, doctor. Her voice faded into the breeze. The game had only just begun. Vivian went stiff, her face unreadable. Thomas's hand trembled. That's, he whispered. Grace Williams, Camilla confirmed. Palliative care nurse. Specialist in terminal oncology. She took care of Isabella during the final 6 months of her life, while the rest of you thought she was simply too tired to leave the house. I don't understand, Thomas muttered, but the look in his eyes betrayed the truth. He understood perfectly. She's my sister, Camilla said, and the silence that followed was deafening. She disappeared 3 days before Isabella died. Coincidentally, on the same day Isabella signed a will that significantly altered the children's inheritance. Vivian finally found her voice. This is blackmail. Thomas, call the police. Blackmail? Camilla let out a quiet, almost pitying laugh. She pulled more documents from her case and spread them across the marble. Let's talk about what blackmail really is. Bank transfers. Confidentiality agreements. Camilla laid them out like a prosecutor in a courtroom. Here, she said, tapping one document. A $50,000 wire transfer from your personal account to Grace, labeled as a discretionary medical expense. And here, she held up another, the NDA you forced her to sign. And here, she pressed a button on her tablet. The recording. Vivian's voice erupted from the speaker, sharp and venomous. You stuck-up little black girl. Isabella is dead. You got your dirty money. Now, disappear before I make sure you're deported like the intruder you are. Thomas's face went white. Vivian looked stricken. Mom, tell me you didn't. She did, Camilla said calmly. Grace had to flee within 24 hours. She left behind her apartment, her patients, her dream of opening a clinic, because your mother threatened to destroy her life. You can't prove any of this, Vivian whispered. Camilla smiled thinly. I can, and I will. Every call, every transfer, every threat. Grace recorded it all. She knew what you'd do. She knew people like you. Thomas leaned against the counter, stunned. She had cancer? For 6 months. Advanced lymphoma, Camilla confirmed softly. She didn't want you or the children to suffer. Grace respected that. She kept her secret, until your mother made sure she could never speak again. Vivian tried to pivot. So this is revenge? No, Camilla said, her voice low and steady. This is justice. For my sister, for Isabella, for Lily and James, who deserve to know the truth. She turned to Thomas. Your wife left letters for the children, one for every birthday until they turn 18. Grace was supposed to give them out, but she never had the chance. They're here. She tapped the folder gently. Thomas broke down. Silent tears rolled down his face. Lily ran in from the hallway. Daddy, why are you crying? Before he could answer, Vivian made one last desperate attempt. Thomas, you can't believe her. This woman planned this from the beginning. She's manipulative. She's dangerous. Yes, Camilla said calmly. I did plan this. I came to find out what happened to my sister. But I stayed because 2 children were wasting away under your lies. She looked at Thomas again, and in the process, I found something I never expected. A man worthy of knowing the truth, and 2 children who deserve to grow up honoring their mother's real story. Thomas stepped forward, red-eyed but resolute. What do you want, Camilla? Money? A settlement for Grace. I want Grace to come home, she replied softly. I want her name cleared. I want her to be recognized for the care and compassion she gave Isabella. And I want Vivian to face the legal consequences of her discrimination and threats. Vivian exploded. You can't do that. I have lawyers. I have connections. And I have the truth, Camila replied. Documented. Recorded. Witness. And I have something you'll never reclaim, Vivian, a clear conscience. As Vivian crumbled, her empire of privilege collapsing around her, Thomas looked toward Camila with something deeper than gratitude. Respect, redemption, and love. 6 months later, the headline read, Blackwood matriarch convicted of racial discrimination, ordered to pay $2 million in damages. Vivian had not only lost a case, but also her positions on 5 prestigious charity boards, and the favor of the elite society she once ruled. She had sold the family mansion to cover the settlement. Her new apartment on the other side of town was modest, furnished in silence and scandal. She learned the hard way, Thomas said one afternoon as he watched Lily and James run to the backyard of their new home. Smaller, simpler, more real. Money doesn't buy dignity, especially once you've lost all of yours. Camila smiled as she adjusted the diamond ring Thomas had placed on her finger just a month earlier. He proposed in the kitchen, mid-laugh, covered in flour from a pancake mishap. It was imperfect and perfect. And Grace? He asked, as he did every week. She's opening the clinic next week, Camila said proudly, with the settlement funds and donations from people who heard her story. Free treatment for underprivileged children, just like she always dreamed. Grace had become a local icon. Newspaper features, healthcare conferences. A quiet storm turned into a symbol of resilience and justice. Her name had been cleared, her work vindicated. Daddy? Camila! Lily raced toward them with open arms. Aunt Grace is here. Through the garden gate came Grace Williams, 35, radiant, eyes shining. In her arms, a box wrapped in colorful paper. The letters, she said, handing them to Thomas. Isabella wrote one for every birthday, so they'd always know she loved them. Thomas took the box with reverence, the weight of loss and truth settling into something beautiful. For the first time in years, the Blackwood family stood on ground that was no longer made of secrets, but of truth and love and second chances. Did she know she was dying? James asked, his voice trembling with something between fear and curiosity. For the last 3 months? Grace nodded gently, her voice soft with memory. Yes, she knew, but she also believed truly that you'd be all right. She looked at the children, their young faces frozen in silence, especially after she met Kama. James blinked confused. She met Kama? Grace's smile was warm and a little sad. Your mom saw a picture of my little sister one day at the hospital. I kept it in my wallet. She held it in her hand for a long while, studying her face, and then she said, That girl has the eyes of someone who loves deeply and cares without condition. If Thomas ever finds someone again, I hope it's someone like her. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of wind brushing the trees, of distant laughter from neighborhood children, and of something sacred being understood without words. So Mom knew, Sophia whispered. Mothers always do, Camila said softly, wrapping both children in her arms. And she chose well. She chose for you to grow up surrounded by love, not secrets, not pain. 3 days later, under a bright blue sky, a crowd gathered for the official opening of the Grace Williams Clinic for Community Pediatric Care. Families from every corner of the city filled the small courtyard, united by something rare and powerful, hope. At the podium, Thomas stepped up with a donation check in his hand. $100, 000 from his own savings. It's the least I can do, he said into microphone, voice thick with emotion, to begin making up for the failures of the past, and to help build a future where no competent professional is ever judged by the color of their skin, but by the quality of their care and the depth of their compassion. The audience erupted in applause. Cameras clicked. But across town in a small, sparsely furnished 2-bedroom apartment, Vivian Blackwood watched the broadcast alone on her phone. Her pearls were gone. Her power, her mansion, her social titles, all gone. What remained was a bitter awareness that Prejudice had cost her far more than money. It had cost her family. That night, Camilla tucked Lily and James into bed. The children clung to her with the kind of love that had once seemed impossible in that house. Their grief had softened into something manageable, reshaped by truth and connection. As she watched them drift into peaceful sleep, she felt the weight of everything that had brought her to this moment. The betrayal, the courage, the fight, and knew it had all led here for a reason. Downstairs, Thomas waited with a glass of wine in hand. He smiled as she entered the room, the soft light catching the engagement ring on her finger. "Do you regret any of it?" he asked gently. Camilla shook her head, sitting beside him. "Only one thing," she said, "that I waited so long to come. Grace suffered for 2 extra years because I wasn't ready to face the truth. I let fear slow me down." Thomas reached for her hand, his thumb tracing her knuckles. "And I regret that it took me this long to realize that the most extraordinary woman I'd ever meet was already in my house." She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. In that quiet, nothing more needed to be said. In the end, Vivian Blackwood had tried to use her privilege and prejudice to silence 2 black women, one a devoted nurse, the other a determined sister. But in doing so, she had done the opposite. She had revealed her own moral poverty and created the very conditions that allowed Grace and Camilla to rise even higher than they might have otherwise. The bitter irony was undeniable. Vivian had tried to keep Grace in her place, yet it was that very cruelty that forged 2 powerful women who now stood in positions of respect, leadership, and legacy. Grace, once forced into hiding, now ran a clinic that would help thousands of underprivileged children. Camilla, once hired as a nanny, now stood at the center of a loving home, soon to be a wife and adoptive mother to the very children she had once been deemed unworthy to feed. Camilla had learned something else, too. The most powerful form of revenge isn't destruction. It's creation. It's building something so whole, so luminous, that the malice thrown at you becomes just another brick in the foundation of your success. In a world that often underestimated her, Camilla had chosen not to retaliate with rage, but with grace. And in doing so, she hadn't just avenged her sister. She had honored her. Have you ever witnessed a moment when someone's prejudice became their downfall? What would you do if you discovered someone close to you had suffered quietly under the weight of discrimination? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories of justice, redemption, and the quiet strength of those who refuse to back down. Because in the end, truth always finds its voice, especially when someone brave enough decides to speak it.